If you did not get one, grab one sometime today or in the next week or two. If you weren't here last week or were traveling, we recognized and celebrated all the volunteers at Dulles Community Church. And it was over 100 people. They came up on stage. Famous Dave's was here. We fed all of our volunteers lunch and had a great time with them. It was really, really fun. I stuffed myself, and so did a lot of you. I watched you. Okay, so I'm just curious, how many got my email this weekend about, okay, a lot of you, okay, good. Well, I hope you're not disappointed. You might be in a few minutes. No, I think this is a special morning for us. If you don't get emails from me and you would like to, you can just give us your name and email on the card. And once or twice a month, I'll send out a note to the church and you'll be on that list. So we did this series, The Face of Love. It was one of our longer series, and it was notable in the office how much feedback we got from a lot of you, verbally and emails and notes, which is really great, and it's affirming. But there is this one nagging issue that remains. And it goes back many, many months now, I think well into last year. Our elders here at Dulles, our staff have heard me verbalize or try to talk this out at various times. Amy has certainly heard me just try to figure this out. Like, what is it that is troubling me or nagging me is probably a better way to express it. And then at the end of the series, it just became clear. And so today is an epilogue. It's at the risk of seeming like I just can't let the series go. We've got one final conversation to have about this idea of the face of love. Okay, so we spent many weeks looking at what we believe and how we see the real picture of love, what love really is. The face of love being God who would come to this earth, not in judgment, but to tell us, no matter what we've done, in our selfishness, in our brokenness, in our self-choosing, the Bible calls sin, apart from God's plan for us, in all of that, He still came to us to say, I love you. And I have a plan for you, and it doesn't matter what you've done. And in our, Paul, the Apostle Paul at one point says we were enemies of God when Jesus came to us. And then, not only does He speak love to us, then He demonstrates what later all the apostles spend much of the New Testament describing as the demonstration of love. He gave up everything for you and me so that we could live, so we could shine, so we could live what our destiny was, to be the full image of God. We were made in His image. And so this is remarkable, and it seemed to resonate because we've heard from so many of you, like, I love this picture of who God is. We all do. I don't know a person, it's possible, not a person who heard these descriptions from the New Testament scriptures isn't compelled. It wouldn't say that's the God that attracts me. A God that doesn't hold over my head my mistakes and my failures, but the God who says it doesn't matter, I love you anyway. And the consequences for self-choosing, I'm going to take that off of you, and I'm going to the cross to represent me standing in your place so that you can be free of the consequences. It's astounding, and it's remarkable, and it leaves us excited. We like this picture of God. We like it. It's attractive to us. But there's this one last nagging issue. And there's someone in the New Testament scriptures that I think relates to where maybe a lot of us are. It's someone who found Jesus very attractive. He was very compelled. It's obvious in the way he talks to him. And yet something is bugging him. And so the story this morning comes from Luke chapter 18. Luke is my favorite book of the Bible. I love teaching from it. And this is one of the many stories that is gripping to me, although this one is somewhat haunting. In verse 18, a certain ruler, without taking a lot of time, this is language, the gospel writer Mark uses this language also. This is speaking of a religious ruler in the land of Israel. It's either a Pharisee or a Sadducee. We know it's a Pharisee. I'll explain that if I have time later. This is someone who knows the Old Testament scriptures extremely well. He's a scholar, he's a teacher, and because of that, he rules with authority. A certain ruler asked Jesus, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit, to be sure that I have eternal life?" And this relates to the nagging issue. See, we see this picture, this face of love, and it compels many of us, if not every single one of us. That's the God that gets my attention. Not the strict God, the God of organized religion, but the God who would give up, like Philippians 2 describes, and 1 John 4, he'd give up so much, everything, so that you and I could live. And we want to say, but look what I've done, look at my past, look at that. And he says, I know, and I love you anyway. And we sit up straight when we see this picture. But see, what's nagging is, it doesn't necessarily, because Jesus came to love us, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're in that love or that we are sure that we have eternal life, that we're right with God. And I see that in a lot of us. We know from a later context that this man is not just well-to-do, but extremely wealthy. He's a young man. The context in other places and later in this story will tell us that he's extremely wealthy. And it relates to something that happened here in this room about 6 or 7 weeks ago. I showed a clip. I'd watched the NBC Nightly News one evening, and it was right about when the story was all over the country, and particularly here in this area. And so I showed the clip. I'm going to show it again. Don't applaud or cheer at the end of this clip, and I'll explain in a minute. Let's take a look.
Forbes magazine is out with its annual rich list, and among other things, it shows where the big money is moving these days. The wealthiest county in the U.S. is now Loudoun County, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. In fact, 7 of the 25 richest counties in America now surround the nation's capital. By the way, you can link to the entire list on our website, nightly.msnbc.com.
Okay, so I showed the clip, and I'm not criticizing anybody. I just wasn't expecting it. Some cheering broke out here when I showed that a couple months ago, and it caught me off guard that some people were clapping and like, yeah, Loudoun County, woo, you know, whatever. And you know, I just want to say that maybe not only should we not cheer, but maybe this should be sobering and alarming to us. Because I think we face a challenge because of this that maybe a lot of other people don't face. See, we have some obstacles that a lot of people don't have to deal with, and that we don't necessarily see the world the way a lot of people do. There are a lot of distractions thrown at us here in the Washington Dulles area. Competing with neighbors, and acquiring the next thing, and we have the means to do this. Many of us do. And I think there should be a part of us that say, wow, this is actually a challenge. This news story challenges me. And so maybe it's okay to say, woo, Loudoun County. I mean, I guess so. But I want to say, wow. Really? Wow. What does that mean? What is God's greater plan? What is this all about if everything is spiritual? And I believe it is. What is this about? What the U.S. Census is telling us about Loudoun County and Fairfax County. By the way, Fairfax County, I think, is number 2 or number 3. So back to the rich young man. This man with authority, this man admired by so many people in the land where he teaches the scriptures, the ancient scriptures. A certain ruler asked Jesus, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Okay, so Mark is a gospel writer. In his version of this story, he just gives us a little bit more information. He says, as Jesus started on his way, a man ran up to him and fell on his knees before him. "Good teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" See, we have the picture of this young man with authority. We find out later that he's extremely wealthy. Because he's young, suggests that he probably inherited this money.